Welcome back, one and all, to my maze game tutorial using GameMaker Studio version 2. And today's a fun one. If you like coding and you like interesting solutions to problems. And what you're looking at here is a new sprite called Sprite Pickups. And you'll notice it's plural and it's got 27 frames, each one a unique picture. This is not for animating. What we're going to do is we're going to use this sprite and we're going to create one master pickup object that when you collide with it, if it happens to be one of these jewels or coins, you'll get points. If it happens to be one of these food items, you'll get health. If it happens to have the little heart or this green flask, you'll get an extra life. If it has this, what looks like nuclear hazard icon, black flask, or frowny face, you're going to get some damage. It's going to hurt you. And then if you collide with a bomb or a skull, it will result in death. If you collide with the void, what I was thinking about is having it send you all the way back to the first room. If you land on exit, it'll send you to the next room. If you hit the button, it'll send you back a room. If you hit this, it will speed you up. And then finally, the mystery one, well, we're going to let random decide what happens with that. So this tutorial is all about pickups, all about affecting score, health, and lives, and all about some randomization. And basically, this was born out of the limitations of the free version. I don't like the limitations you got. You can only have up to 20 sprites and 15 objects, etc., etc. And so I thought, let's figure out how we can maximize efficiency and create what seems like lots of different objects, but only doing one. So here's the plan. First of all, you're going to need to create a sprite. We call it sprite pickups. And I hand drew this particular sprite. And what this is about is I wanted to be able to place it in the room and know it's a pickup. I could have designed it any way I wanted. It could be circular, it could be square, no big deal. I made all of these 32 by 32. I hand drew this one, and then I just imported the rest, and I did it methodically. I selected all of some point-based ones from the 2 coin to the diamond by just basically clicking Edit Image, and you can go to Image, and you can import images, or hold down Control and Shift, and then type the letter A. And then that just lets you select images. Let me just show you how you might do it. Let's say we wanted these books. You can click on one. If they're all together, you can hold down Shift and then click on another, and it highlights them all. If you hold down the Control button, then you can kind of select sort of at random different shapes. If you click again and you do not have Shift or Control selected, you just kind of deselect everything. And then if you're holding down Control when you try to scroll down, you're not actually going to do that. You're actually going to zoom in and out. So really the better way to do it would just be Control, select the ones you see, scroll, select more, etc. One thing I did not do any of these sparkle strips or anything that was a strip that was animated. This tutorial is not designed to sort of deal with cycling through multiple frames and only animating partial ones. Although I could easily do that if there was enough interest in me doing it. The other thing to note is that the number of these is going to make a difference in my GameMaker language code. If you have a different number of point items than I have, that will you're going to want to take careful note of that. And I'll try to walk through how I sort of go through and process this one at a time. One other thing is there is no frowny face in the assets. I actually just used Photoshop and edited the smiley face, and I just exported an extra one and then brought it in. So you would need to do some editing. I really do not like the editor here for tools. I'm not a fan of it. I used Photoshop, but you use whatever editor you want to mess around. And you can do different sprites. You can add them different ways. But the main thing here, let me give you actually a couple more things. We're going to begin by just randomly selecting one of these frames, but we will not select the first one. We don't want the PU selected because we don't want to show it. It would just be weird. The player wouldn't get it. This is for us putting it in the room, so we know we've put a pickup there. The other thing, too, is that we're going to randomly select by just one of these numbers. And one of the things I intentionally did is I only made like 2 of these that give extra lives. I wanted the likelihood that these would be selected to be more slim than the likelihood that, for example, a food item was selected or a coin item was selected. So some of we consider that like a rarity of certain objects. If you just have one of one kind, like the speed up one or the mystery one, it won't appear as often unless you put tons of them in the room, and then they might. Okay, so that being said, all right, once we do that, let's go create our object. And so we're just going to right click on objects, create object, and we're going to call this object underscore pickup. And we're going to select the sprite pickup. So that way we can see that. It's a lot easier to see. All right, let's go ahead and add a create event. Okay, so a lot of the coding we're going to do, well, it's all going to be GML. And most of the coding that we're going to do in this tutorial right now is going to focus on the creation of the object. And the reason why I want to do that is this is where a lot of the work is going to happen. And then we'll walk through this a little bit more. First thing we want to do is stop the animation. And it helps to know your image built-in variables. So that would be image speed equals 0. Stops the animation. And then now watch this. I'm going to use the image index. And of course, this variable represents what frame it's going to show. I'm going to set it to 0 because I want to show what it looks like when you add it into the room. Okay, I've opened up the room. I want to make sure I'm on the instances layer. I'm going to drag the object pickup. And I'm going to put 2 different pickups in the room so you can sort of see the difference between them. Let's go ahead and run them. And you can see, because I set the image index to 0, you'll see the PU. PU. All right. Nothing happens when I collide with it yet. All right. So now I'm going to do a little bit. We're going to kind of like methodically go through here so you can kind of see a couple things here. Interestingly enough, if you set it to image, if you set image index to image number, we can actually have this variable that represent how many sub images or how many frames there are in the sprite. So image number will actually be 27 because there's 27 frames in all. But if we set it to 27, watch what happens. It's a little interesting. So let me just show you the code here. We'll come back. So I just want to point out image number. If we run it, you're going to see the PU again, and I'll explain why. And there it is. If you may have noticed, the first time I set it to 0, let's go back to the sprites here. Interestingly enough, when they mention what frame it is, they'll say 1 of 27. Well, this frame 1 is actually a image index of 0. It's 0 based. The first one starts at 0. So if we set this to image number, we set 27. If we were to start counting at 0 and there are 27 in all, this last one is actually 26. So let me prove to you that. And so we're going to change this to 26. And we're going to run it, and you should see the question mark. Let's see if I'm right. Okay, and you do. Again, so because there's 27 frames in all, if we start with 0, the last one, or the 27th one, will actually be one less than the image number. That all being said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to, I'll put a little comment in here, pick a random pickup. Ironic, right? And so we're going to put random image. We're going to even put pickup equals, and we're going to do I random range. Oops. And let me just hide this. Range. I random range. If you look down here, you'll see there's an X1 and X2. If we put 1, that means we'll pick the first frame after the PU. And then if we were to do image number -1, we don't need to know how many image frames there are. And we could change the frames. This still will work because it'll pick between 1 and whatever that image number is -1. In our case, that's 26. It's going to pick a random integer between 1 and 26. We don't know which one it's going to be. So instead of setting it to 26, we're going to set it to random pickup. And let's run it and see what our random pickups are. And each image or each pickup should be different. And as you can see, they are. Now, interestingly enough, we run it again, they'll still be the same. This is one of those weird quirks of Game Maker Studio. But watch what happens when I get the room restarted. Oh, they're different. You see that? Okay. So it's kind of interesting. Every time you restart a room, you're going to get a different pickup. So it will randomize a little bit. But interestingly enough, the first time you start that room, it'll always be the same each time. All right, go figure. All right, so now we've got this thing here. What we're going to do is we're going to set type of pickup based on the random pickup. Okay. Now, we could just call it pickup. But this random pickup is going to be a number. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, but honestly, it doesn't really matter what that number is. And I'll show you why. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check. And we're going to do this. Actually, we're going to set type equals nothing. All right, I'm going to set this. And I'll explain why in just a moment. Now I'm going to do a little if. Okay. And now I'm going to do if random pickup is greater than 0. I'm going to use the ampersand. And random pickup is less than. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at our pickups. And we're going to go back to the beginning. And if this is 1, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's less than 9, it's going to be basically points. It's less than 9. Okay, so we go over here, object pickup. And it's less than 9. And we're going to go ahead and do a little curly bracket. We're going to say type equals points. Then we're going to do an else type equals, well, we'll say mystery for now. So this setting the type, I did this because if I don't, sometimes you definitely need to have an else statement. This is called initializing it, and we could actually do this. Set it to that. That might be a good way to do it. All right, let's go ahead and let's have a collision with the pickup. And if it happens to have a type of points, we're going to get some points. So I go to my object player, and I'm going to add a collision event. So that would be collision with the object pickup. And now I'm going to drag this out. And I'm going to go ahead and hide this and double click on here so we can sort of focus in on this. And we'll full screen this. And we'll say, well, let's just put it here. If, I'm going to put other. Other represents the other object. I'm going to put a dot, and I'm going to start writing type. If the other type is equal to points, then I'm going to put game controller, because it's game controller dot, and this was p score plus equals, we can put 100, for example. There we go. And then the other thing, we should do an instance destroy. And in it, we'll put other. And what that does is this basically will remove other object. And what that's going to do is going to, if we don't remove it, then we're going to keep colliding with it. We're going to keep getting points, and we don't want to do that. In fact, we could actually do that before we do the collision, and it will still work because we've already collided with it. We run all of this code. Let's just double check and see if it works. As you may recall, the first 2 items were points. So let's go ahead and collect those and see if we can get more score. Yep, 100, 200, there you go. And we restart the room, 300, and nothing happened there. And you get the idea. Well, at this juncture, we can start really getting fancy with this. And so now this is the structure of how we're going to do all of this. And so for the rest of this tutorial, I'm just going to show you just a couple more, and then I'll let you sort of see if you can figure out how to do the rest. So let's do an else if. And honestly, the else part of the if is not 100% necessary. And the reason why is that these are unique ranges, and you have to be greater than one and less than the other, or else it doesn't work. So, like if I were to say, something's greater than 8 and less than 20, and it was 23, well, it won't work. That didn't make as much sense. I probably could have done a better job with that. Now we're going to say if it's greater than 8, and random, pickup is less than, and now we got to go back here, and now we're saying that's frame 9, so it's frame 9, but it's going to be position 8, one less, greater than 8, okay, so that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so less than 15. All right, so we go back to the object pickup, it's less than 15. Then we're going to set the type equals health. And then we're going to go back to our object player, and we're going to do the same thing, and then we're going to do an else if, and this is another one of those where we actually don't technically need the else in there. But for the times you might be tempted to always do a bunch of ifs chained together, that can cause some problems. So it's sometimes better just to run it this way. Other.type is equal to, and then we'll put health. And then it's game controller dot p health, and we can just set it to 100 like so, and we can save our changes. And now let's run it a few times and see if we can restore our health. The other thing you'll notice is when the room restarts, we don't get a health reset. So I actually have to die a few times to get this to work. Hey, get back here. Here we go. No! Still need some health here. Come on, little health, little health. Here we go, hamburger, and all right, my health went back. Perfect. So that works. So this is the structure that you're going to do, and it requires 2 locations: the object pickup in create, and the object player in collision with the object pickup. And it's the game controller values that we're changing. So guess what we could do? We could do the next one. Else if other type is equal to lives. Then it's game controller p lives. And we can put a plus equals 1. All right. Now we're going to have to go ahead and set that in the object pickup. So this becomes another else if, and it's random. And now I wish I picked a shorter variable than random pickup. It's greater than 14. Got to be one less than the value we did up here. Notice I'm doing all either greater than and lesser than. I'm using the ampersand because they got to meet both qualifications. And then random pickup is less than. Now we're going to figure out the end of the lives, which is only 2 more. So if this is frame 16, so it's less than 17. And so now we have this. So we'll save our changes. And the last thing I want to do is I'm going to grab some more objects in the room, and I'm going to run this with a debugger. I think it's helpful for you to see the debugger. And I just want a lot of pickups in here. And I'm not recommending you do this many. I'm not recommending you don't do that many. The last thing I want to do, though, is before I do the debugger, I'm going to go to the object player. And I'm going to, on the collision with the pickup, I'm going to do what's called toggle a breakpoint. And so what's going to happen is if I run in debugger, as soon as we collide and we start running this code, it's going to pause the game. And we can check some values here. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And then I'm going to intentionally collide with an object. And you'll notice it freezes. And you can see in GameMaker, this is open up over here. So let's see what's going on in our game by grabbing this, pulling it up. And we're going to look at variables. We have self, and we have other. And there's type. Random pickup is 2. The type is points. So we click on here. We type F11. And we check to take a look at other.type is equal to points. It is. So the game controller .p score now gets 100. And now we can see the health, lives, and score. And so we can see where health is at this moment. And now it's going to draw the health bar. And you kind of run through. Now this is going to, we can see every line of code. Or we can just hit play. And my game's playing again. And now we can go and collide again. And with this object, we can see what's going on here. And you can see that the type is points, but this time the pickup was number 5. And then we can run through. So we can kind of go test this stuff. And let's take a look. I want to see one of the other objects and see what other things we have. There's a bomb. Now, we collided the bomb and it pauses again. And notice it says it's a mystery. We don't know what it is because we haven't coded it yet. So we're just going to go ahead and hit play. This time I'm going to try to avoid all bombs until I figured out, here's food. So this is health. You'll notice it's a random pickup of 14. It is health. So now let's run through here. F11 is what I'm typing. If other.type is equal to points. It's not, so we skip it. Now we check to see. If it's not that, is it health? And it is. So we restore our health. So let's take a look at, well, let's just run F11 and notice P health is at 100. Okay, so you can see the debugger in action. It's always kind of fun to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and stop the debugger, which stops the playing of the game. And let's just end with looking at the code that we've created. And so I just want to kind of do a quick walkthrough of what we did. Just remind you, we stop animating. We randomly select one of the pickups based on the sub-images between 1 and the number of images minus 1. And then we create a variable called, we take that variable and we assign the image index to that number, and then that's what chooses what it looks like. But then we're basically going to set the type of the pickup based on which random pickup number it's selected. If it's between 0 and 9, if it's between 1 and 10, it's got to be greater than 0 or less than, or 1 and 8, excuse me, less than 9. It becomes points, otherwise health, otherwise lives. Now, there is a to-do list of going through here and figuring out the remaining ones. I'm going to do that on my own. And on my next tutorial, I'll show you what I came up with for some of these other solutions, especially the mystery one and the speed up, because that's going to require some changes to some of our code and the way we do things also on here. So I do thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more, and I'll just end with playing this game. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for my next tutorial. Oh, did you see that? Lives is now working. Oh, now I gotta open it up. Uh-oh. I think I have some fixes to do. I'll come back and do that later.